My name is Vivian. I am 34 years old, and I used to think I had grown used to being invisible in my family. But nothing could have prepared me for that moment. Right at my brother Gregory's 50th birthday party, held at a luxurious hotel in Houston, under the glitter of crystal chandeliers, with elegant jazz playing and hundreds of well-dressed guests, my parents suddenly pulled me up on stage. No warning, no explanation. Before I could even process what was happening, my mother, wearing a gold evening gown, smiled gently as if she were making a solemn announcement, then spoke into the microphone. Our little girl will give the Austin mansion to Gregory and Emily as a wedding gift. It's a gift of love. I stood stunned amid the whispers, phones held high, recording every moment. And when I said no, my father stepped forward, said nothing, and slapped me, right in front of everyone. Have you ever had a family member turn you into a public sacrificial lamb, then pin the label "sacrifice for the family" on your pain? If you've ever chosen silence to keep the peace, comment under the video. If you believe everyone has the right to keep what they worked for, hit like, subscribe, and follow, because my story is only just beginning. I left the stage to a soft, whispered hush, each step swallowed by the thick red carpet beneath the ballroom floor. No one stopped me, no one followed. In a room packed with people, I had never felt so alone. The jazz still played behind me, mingling with the clink of glasses and faint laughter, as if nothing had happened. As if that slap were just a small aside, outside the main script. I did not turn around. Not once. The door to the hallway closed behind me with a soft click, enough to separate me from the family performance still going on inside. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. The car lights reflected neon signs along the highway, like flashes of memory passing through my mind. I had been the eldest child in the Sullivan family, born in a small red brick house in Fort Worth, where my mother used to place a hand on her belly when telling fairy tales, and my father always promised he would name a house after me, built with his own hands. All of that now lives only in my memory, because no one mentions it anymore. I moved to Dallas after college. At first for work, later because I could no longer breathe in that house. Interior design is not a career that made anyone in my family proud. My father, Howard, would tell acquaintances that I adjust curtains for rich people. And my mother, Caroline, would just shrug whenever someone asked about me, as if I were a faint branch of the bright Gregory brand they had cultivated. I'm not jealous. Really, I'm not. Gregory always knew how to impress. From childhood, he was the spelling bee winner, class president, then an honor student, interned at a big firm, married a smart, beautiful woman, and launched his own real estate company. Me. I don't like attention. I prefer quiet rooms, soft light, spaces that speak in place of people. I live in a world of materials, colors, and proportions, and I've lived well enough to buy a 2-story home in Austin entirely with my own money. It's just, my family didn't see it that way. They never said it outright, but I felt it in short phone calls. In times, they asked me to put my name on a small loan because Gregory's having a bit of trouble with his credit. And at dinner parties where I washed dishes, while all the praise went to the son who knows how to make money, I lent Gregory $60,000 when he opened his first office. No contract, no interest, just the promise that I'll pay you back soon. I never brought it up, never demanded anything. And whenever my mother called, asking me to help out with Maxine's child's tuition, Maxine being my cousin, I never refused. But at some point, I began to feel like I was no longer a real part of the family picture. Like I was a temporary pillar to hold things up when they wobbled, then pushed aside when they wanted to take photos. I had been on the sidelines for too long. My apartment is on the 9th floor. With just the right light and dark brown wood floors, I picked myself. I designed every detail of this space as if it were a way to build myself, each corner reflecting a part of what I never got to say. But that night, when the elevator door closed behind me, I felt as though I had stepped out of someone else's life. I changed clothes, washed my face, and made myself a cup of peppermint tea. As steam rose from the white ceramic cup, I caught a blurry reflection of myself on the kitchen window. Light from the building across the way fell over my face, splitting it into half light, half shadow. I wondered how long it had been since I last looked straight into a mirror. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. What happened earlier was unintentional. Hope you understand. No apology. No admission. Just the way they always do things, quietly shifting blame. I did not reply. I opened my inbox. Promotional emails. A few bills. And an invitation to the launch of a design collection from a partner company I had freelanced for. I had built the sample homes for them, and then Gregory stepped in and won the maintenance contract for the chain of projects because he knows someone in upper management. I smiled at the signing ceremony. I posed for the photos, standing back a step, no name, no introduction. I thought I had let that happen too many times. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dim light of my living room, fingers tracing the edge of the throw on the sofa, my mind hollow. Outside the window, a light rain began to fall, each drop tapping steadily on the glass, as if waking something inside me. I jumped up, pulled a file from the drawer. The papers related to the Austin mansion purchase. Documents, mortgage contracts, payment confirmations were all there, carefully kept. Everything is in my name. I did everything necessary to protect it. And yet they still thought they could take it from me as if I were an outsider. I opened my laptop, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at a familiar name, Ethan Marshall. We were classmates in our final year of college, and he is now an attorney specializing in personal property. I had never needed him before. But perhaps the time had come. I hit call. The ring sounded a few times before he picked up, his voice a little groggy but steady as always. Vivian? I hesitated, then said more clearly than I expected. I need you to help me get back what no one should be able to touch. I arrived at the hotel later than I planned, after turning around to get the gift I'd left in the trunk. It was a gold-framed portrait I'd sketched from Gregory and Emily's wedding photo. Even though I didn't care for her much, I wanted the gift to be proper. I had never done anything half-hearted for my family, even when they treated me like I didn't exist. The building sat in downtown Houston, so grand it made me feel small in my simple navy dress, no label, no tassels, no slits. I gave my name at the reception. The young clerk in a neat suit ran his finger down the list. Vivian Sullivan? He looked up, hesitating. Your name is not on the main list. It's listed only as +1 under the Gregory family. I didn't react immediately. It felt like someone had quietly pulled the rug out from under me. Can I see it? I asked, keeping my voice calm. The printed list showed each name clearly. Gregory Sullivan, Caroline and Howard Sullivan, Emily and family. Even my cousin Rachel and her 3 kids had their own listing. I was typed in at the very bottom. Guest of family, +1. The clerk quickly offered. I can write your name on the badge by hand. Or if you prefer, I'll leave it as is. I cut in, a small smile on my lips. The badge that said guest hung on my chest like an invisible stamp, affirming that I didn't belong. I walked into the grand hall where lights shimmered over crystal glasses and live jazz drifted from the band. Servers floated by with trays of champagne flutes. I took one, though my throat felt like sandpaper. The party filled the hotel ballroom, tables draped in silk, candles scented with cinnamon and sandalwood, rows of chairs set like a Broadway stage. Everything had been arranged to perfection for Gregory. At the center, a giant LED screen. Beside it, a gift table between 2 displays of white and purple orchids. I scanned the seating chart again. Nothing. After a few minutes, I found the card, Guest, Table 17, tucked by a service door where staff came and went, an obscure corner, the spot reserved for the unimportant. I sat, set the gift beside my plate. The napkin folded into a swan lay, crooked, collapsed as if someone had given up on finishing it. I thought about smoothing it out, but my hand froze. Something tightened in my throat. Applause rose from the stage. The lights softened. The screen came to life. Images of Gregory in his Little League uniform with a bat. Then a photo of him winning a high school debate. Clips cut between him shaking hands with the mayor, signing his first big contract, receiving an architectural award. My mother's voice came over the speakers, warm and smooth. From the very beginning, Gregory has been the light of our family. We always believed he would do something extraordinary. Then, my father's voice, proud and low, the boy has leadership in his blood. He's the future pillar of the Sullivan name. I sat still, smiling faintly as if appreciating a performance. In my head, other images flashed like an edited film. Nights I spent fixing Gregory's first financial plan. The 3-hour drive from Dallas to Austin to deliver a showroom layout. The time I emptied my savings to help him put down the first month's rent. Not a single moment in the video mentioned me. The curtain on the LED lowered. Applause swelled. Then the MC said, "And now, please welcome someone very special to Gregory. A little surprise for our dear brother." Before I could react, I saw my mother stand, microphone in hand, beckoning me. "Vivian, sweetheart, come up here with me," she said in a voice as sweet as honey. I climbed the stage, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The stage lights were blinding. I kept blinking. My mother wrapped an arm around my shoulder, her smile radiating as if she'd orchestrated a perfect reunion for national television. She's always been quiet and modest, but tonight I believe she'll present a most unexpected gift, she announced. I turned to her, voice low. "What are you talking about?" She smiled, squeezed my arm, and faced the audience. "Gregory, my dear, today, you turn 50. I can't think of anything more meaningful than having your sister give the Austin mansion. It's under her name, but she always says family comes first. Right, Vivian?" An odd hush swept over the ballroom. Forks froze midair. Phone cameras started to stir. I looked at Gregory. He avoided my gaze. Emily stared at me, expression unsurprised. This was not an impulsive stunt. They had planned it. I looked at my mother. "You want me to give the house?" I asked quietly, my voice flat. "Don't make this heavy, darling," she replied. "It's a gift for the family's happiness." I took the microphone and breathed deeply. "I'm sorry, but that house is my work. It's not a gift." Gregory clenched his chair arm. Emily rolled her eyes. My mother's smile stiffened. My father rose from the head table and walked up on stage. In front of hundreds, he raised his hand and slapped my face. The sound wasn't loud. But in that instant, the room fell silent. I didn't cry. I didn't bow my head. I simply adjusted the guest badge still dangling at my chest. Then I stepped down, walking away calmly, coldly. Behind me, cameras still clicked. No one stopped me. Not a single friend intervened. No words of support. Only Gregory's gaze followed me to the door. It wasn't pity, nor regret. It was fear. Fear because he knew I wouldn't stay silent forever. I left the hotel in silence, my hand still stinging where my father had struck. But that pain was not as disorienting as the eyes of hundreds who witnessed and did nothing. It felt like I'd been stripped bare among strangers, not because of the slap, but because of the complicity of silence. Outside, Houston's night air was warm and sticky. I stood under the canopy near the parking area, trying to steady my breath. No one called me back. No one asked if I was okay. I no longer expected anything. My car was parked in the farthest corner, an old silver crossover. I pressed the lock. The lights flashed. I climbed in, locked the doors, and sat still for a long moment. My rear view reflected my swollen eyes, but I did not cry. Tears were no longer an automatic response for me. Instead, there was a slow, smoldering emptiness, like a moonlit lake frozen solid, eerily still. I got home at around 1 a.m., parked, and stepped into the familiar hallway of my apartment building. My keys were still in my bag. I fitted the key into the lock and the door clicked open gently. Everything was where I left it. The kitchen light I'd left on glowed faintly. The gift I hadn't yet given Gregory still sat on the sofa. I set my bag on the table and reached inside to grab my phone charger. And only then did I remember the small side pocket where I always tucked the spare key to the Austin house. It had been a fixed habit for years, back when I worried about losing a key on visits. I opened the zipper and put my hand in. Empty. I turned the bag inside out. Phone, wallet, a few old receipts, lip balm, a pen, a half-eaten snack, tangled earbuds, but no spare key. I stood there a long moment. Then I went into the bedroom, rifled through the little travel wallet I used for business trips. Nothing. A jittery unease rose in me. I remembered the dinner about a week ago at my parents' place in Westlake. When we left, my father had handed my bag back to me with a slightly embarrassed tone. "I thought it was your mother's bag, sorry." We swapped at the door and mixed them up. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. Now it felt different. I dropped onto the living room floor, back against the couch, my head spinning. It felt like someone had been in my home without my knowledge. Not a forced break-in, a quiet, deliberate intrusion. The next morning, before I could shake the thought, the phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, I'm Jeanette from Clearpoint Realty. I'm calling to confirm the viewing appointment for the house in Austin you registered. Today at 2 p.m., correct? My client and I will meet at the main entrance. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. Which house are you referring to? My voice was hoarse. The mansion at 1244 Heather Glen Drive, East Austin. The property is listed in your name, Vivian Sullivan. The listing was created by co-owner Howard Sullivan. The documents include your electronic signature. I swallowed hard. My heart pounded. Jeanette, I never submitted a listing for that house. And I never agreed to any viewing. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, I understand. I'll cancel the appointment. But the listing is still live in our system. It's possible someone created an account in your name. If you'd like, I can email you a copy of the listing to review. I hung up before I could say anything more. My whole body trembled. There was no longer any doubt. They hadn't only slapped me in public. They had crossed into my territory. They had touched property I'd built with blood and sweat and tried to sell it behind my back, as if I no longer existed in their lives. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Travis County property records. The ownership was still listed in my name. But that didn't guarantee they hadn't forged other documents. With a father like mine, who had connections at some local banks and title offices, anything could be manipulated if I didn't act fast. I opened my email and began composing a message to Ethan Marshall. In my head, the chaotic fragments of memory converged into a single point. It wasn't just the slap, not just the humiliating +1 on the name tag, not just the tribute video that canonized Gregory without ever mentioning me. It was the creeping sense that I was being erased piece by piece, from reality and from the family record. I wrote simply, Ethan, I need to see you urgently. Someone is trying to take my property. I believe this is planned, not a spur-of-the-moment act. I hit send, then sat staring at the screen, my palms sweating. Outside, the wind was picking up. Last night's rain hadn't washed away the filth I'd just realized was woven into the fabric of my family, the transfers I'd quietly made, the birthday gifts that went unmentioned, the nights I tidied up after parties without anyone remembering my name. But perhaps I could no longer be the shadow. Not when they were trying to strip away the last thing I could call mine. That afternoon, while I was at Ethan's office reviewing ownership documents, my phone rang. My mother's name filled the screen. I let it ring through the fifth tone before answering. I still couldn't forget how sweet and polished her voice sounded in front of everyone at the party, like a charity gala speaker, not a woman who had just pushed her daughter onto a stage. I picked up. No greeting, no preamble. What is it? She was silent for a few seconds, then spoke in a tone so falsely gentle it made my skin crawl. I want you to come home tonight. No one else. Just family. I baked your favorite apple pie. I think it's time we had a frank talk. I glanced at Ethan, who was scanning the broker documents. He looked up when my expression changed. I'll come, I told my mother, but only for 30 minutes. And if anyone else is there besides our parents, I'll leave. She hesitated, then answered, Just family, Vivian. I promise. I ended the call, packed my folder, and stood. Ethan asked, You sure? I don't think they'll try a new contract stunt, I said, half joking. But I'm not going alone. I can come with you, he offered quietly, resolute. I shook my head. If I show up with a lawyer, they'll tighten up immediately. I need to see what they want without them putting up a wall. I need them to let their guard down. Ethan nodded and pulled out his phone. If you don't call me within an hour of getting there, I'll call the police. I agreed, left his office as the late afternoon light thinned, carrying a silence that had been ripening in me for years. The house I grew up in still sits on that quiet Westlake lane, behind old oak trees and neatly trimmed flower beds. From the outside it looked the same, but climbing the worn wooden steps made my stomach clench. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in a beige sweater, holding the embroidered cloth. She hugged me just enough for an outsider to assume everything was normal. "Come in, dear. The pie is still warm." I stepped inside. The living room smelled of cinnamon and butter, like holiday evenings from my childhood. But instead of comforting me, the scent put me on guard. The air was too neat, too staged. The coffee table was set, 2 steaming teacups, a tray of pastries, and an old photo album open to my high school graduation page. I sat and let my eyes roam over the carefully placed photographs, Gregory and me as children, me holding our dog Baxter, me in a teal prom dress at 17. All the images I had assumed they'd forgotten were laid out with intention. My father emerged from the hallway in a white shirt, carrying a large cream envelope. "Vivian," he said in a steadier voice than usual, "we need to speak like adults." I stared at the envelope. "What's in there?" "Just papers to clarify everyone's interests." He set it on the coffee table between the teacups and took a seat. I did not touch it. My mother nudged the pastry tray toward me. "Have a bite, then we'll talk." I didn't pick up a fork. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You called me here to talk, then talk." My father opened the envelope and took out a stack of printed papers. On top was the header, Internal Family Asset Transfer Minutes, Form G17/AB. I didn't reach for it. I just looked at him. "Do you really think, after everything, I'm going to sign this?" I asked. My mother jumped in, soothing. "It's not what you think. It's just a formality to make things clear and avoid legal headaches later. The house stays with the family. You still have a voice." I barked a dry laugh. "A voice like +1 on a birthday list? Or like the 3-minute script you read on the video, mother that never mentioned the sister who lent Gregory startup money?" My mother's face tightened. My father folded his arms. "Are you blaming us?" he asked. "You're an adult, Vivian. Look beyond personal feelings. That mansion should serve Gregory's future. He's carrying the family name." I leaned back into the stiff sofa and stared at the 2 people in front of me. I no longer saw parents. I saw 2 people negotiating property with me as if I were a stranger. "Fine," I said slowly. "Treat this like a transaction. Only the other side has nothing to offer in return." The room thickened. At that moment, Gregory came out from the back office. He wore a charcoal polo, hair slicked, phone in hand. "You don't have to make this dramatic," he said, looking at my father rather than at me. I stood. "You were there the whole time?" "I'm here to back Mom and Dad, in case you get too emotional." I shook my head. "No need to worry. I am not emotional. I'm exhausted." He met my gaze properly then. "You always play the victim, Vivian. Living in Dallas, single, never mentioned. Don't ruin things over your hurt feelings." I stepped closer until we were face to face. My feeling of being neglected isn't imagined. It was forged year after year, cut phone calls, forgotten invitations, the +1 on the invitations. And now you try to sell the house listed in my name behind my back. What is that, if not family? Gregory shrugged. "You're just a shadow. Don't ruin everything because you're hurt." I looked at him for a long time, then at my parents. I didn't come here to talk anymore. I came to see the true faces of people I grew up with. And I've seen enough. I pulled out my phone and texted Ethan. "They've brought the transfer papers. Gregory is here. I'm coming now." I left. No one stopped me. No one called my name. No apology. Only the faint scent of cinnamon clung to my coat and the stack of transfer papers remained on the coffee table beside the untouched apple pie. I walked away from the Westlake house feeling like I'd just left a poorly staged play. I didn't look back. I didn't care whether they watched me go from the window. The drive from there to Ethan's office is about a 12-minute drive, but each minute felt heavy, as if I were carrying all the years I'd pretended not to be hurt. Ethan was still at the office when I arrived. He was reviewing the files related to the mansion when I pushed the door open, not yet having taken off my coat. "I didn't sign anything," I said, my voice firm. They put the transfer papers right on the coffee table, and Gregory was there from the start. They staged the whole thing. Even the smell of apple pie. Ethan set his pen down and looked up at me. There was no surprised expression, just a small nod, as if he had expected it to play out that way. "Sit down." I need to show you a few things, he said, pulling a chair out across from him. I dropped my bag and sat opposite him. A cup of tea had gone cold beside a thick stack of documents, neatly clipped in a dark brown leather folder. Ethan opened the file and turned the pages like someone peeling back layers of a long fermenting secret. Do you remember 2012, when your parents almost lost the Westlake house to the bank over an unpaid loan? He asked. I nodded slightly. They called me for 3 days straight. Your father told me you were the only one in the family who understood the paperwork and had funds to resolve it quickly. It didn't tell anyone. I withdrew more than $300,000 from my savings to buy the property back, to save the house from foreclosure. I remember signing at the notary nearly 8 p.m. Because the clerk was working overtime. Ethan pushed a title confirmation across to me. My name was printed there, bold and clear, as the sole owner. You never transferred ownership back. There is no legal document showing you granted them independent use, and there certainly hasn't been any sale, he said. I stared at the page. Part of me had suspected, but seeing the proof made it harder to breathe. For over 10 years, they've lived in that house as if it were theirs, I said slowly. They redid the interior to my mother's taste. Put Gregory's name on the mailbox when he lived there for a year, hosted guests, threw parties, celebrated Christmas. Nobody, not even relatives, knew the property wasn't registered in their name. Ethan nodded and slid another file toward me. And there's more, he said. For the Austin mansion, they tried to create a fake account under your name, using an electronic signature pulled from an old contract, then submitted documents to list the house for sale. We have IP trace evidence. The entire listing was initiated from your parents' Wi-Fi. I clenched my hands into fists. So, not only did they intend to sell the house, they also impersonated me, accessing the brokerage system with old information to bypass verification. Exactly, Ethan said. That's identity fraud. We can sue them. I leaned back, tilting my head, my eyes still fixed on the paper with my name. I didn't know what I felt: anger, hurt, emptiness, but I knew they had pushed me past every limit I'd set. What do you want me to do? Ethan asked, his tone calm but direct. I can request an injunction to stop the sale this week. And if you agree, I can start the legal process to reassert ownership in court and even ask that they vacate the Westlake house. I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window where late afternoon sun fragmented on the sill. Something stirred inside me, not rage, but a quiet determination that had been asleep for years. Ethan, I said, do you remember the year I helped you get your college scholarship? He smiled gently. How could I forget? If you hadn't written that recommendation, I wouldn't have gotten into Columbia. I didn't think much of it then. I only thought that if I could help someone overcome what I'd seen as hard, I should do it. Ethan tilted his head, his expression heavy. I understand. I looked back at the stack on the table and spoke, without hesitation. I don't need their apologies. I don't need any of them to kneel or weep in remorse. I just want back the part of my life they've occupied for too long. Ethan nodded, took out his phone and dialed his partner. I sat, still, unmoving, my fingers tracing the edge of the title document not to test its authenticity, but to feel it. For the first time in many years, I touched something that belonged to me, and no one could deny that anymore. Not because I'm a daughter, not because I'm not Gregory, not because I had been silent. Ethan's phone kept ringing. I closed my eyes and breathed evenly. The layers of memory: an afternoon outside the playground, watching Gregory cheered by our parents. The dinners where I washed dishes while the family toasted his achievements no longer overwhelmed me. They were just a faded backdrop. I had stepped away. And now, I could stand in the frame without asking anyone's permission. After that meeting, Ethan gave me very clear instructions. Don't react hastily. Let them think you've backed down. We need time to gather evidence. A counterstrike works best when the other side is completely unprepared. I followed his advice. I didn't call my mother back. I ignored Gregory's messages. I disappeared from the usual channels. I kept working as if nothing had happened. I still woke at 6 a.m., made coffee, and went to the design office on schedule. But every evening, after returning to my apartment, I sat for hours with my laptop, opening old files, checking every note, Every email, every receipt I could find. I wanted to know exactly what I had given, and how much they had quietly taken. 3 days later, I found an attached copy of a bank loan agreement in an email from 5 years ago. It was a document I had never seen. A loan of $150,000 secured by the real property located at 1244 Heather Glen Road, the Austin mansion. I stared at the signature line at the bottom. My name was written in a slanted cursive, looking natural at a glance, but I knew the strokes of my own hand, and this signature was too even, almost as if it had been generated from a template. I forwarded the email to Ethan that, at night with a note, "I did not sign this. They used my name to borrow money." 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Vivian, that's a serious violation. Forging a signature and using someone else's identity to obtain credit is a crime. Are you sure you never saw this document?" "Never. If I had, I wouldn't have let it slide." Ethan's voice tightened. "We need to request credit trace audits immediately. If they used your information, there may be other transactions in your name you don't know about. Have you ever received odd mailings from banks or lenders?" I sifted through my memory until something popped up. There were a few envelopes from banks I don't normally use. I thought they were junk mail. Ethan sighed, heavy. "They used your trust to do things you can't imagine." I shut the laptop and walked to the window. City lights blurred against the glass, reflecting a pale version of my face. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part had a chilling calm. I returned to the table and pulled out my notebook, jotting down timelines related to my properties. Ethan guided me in reconstructing the entire ownership history, detailing every sum I'd contributed and every time I'd helped the family financially, even the unrecorded favors. We called it the memory file. The things I'd given that no one mentioned would be set down in clear language, precise figures, and exact dates. Ethan sent his paralegal to work with the 3 banks where I'd had accounts. Within 2 days, they returned credit summaries. The results showed 3 separate loans under my name, totaling nearly $290,000. 2 of them had been paid off, but none had been initiated by me. One payment notice even listed the payer as Howard Sullivan, authorized cosigner. I nearly choked when I read that line. "This can't be a mistake," I said when Ethan came to my apartment that Saturday afternoon. "They used my name as a financial vehicle. They borrowed, used, and paid back without my consent. And that's still a violation," Ethan said. "Even if they paid them off, using someone else's identity without authorization is federal law violation." We agreed to file a complaint in Travis County Court. Ethan said he would keep the filings confidential until a judge issued a temporary restraining order preventing any interference with the properties. That would stop them from selling, mortgaging, or altering paperwork for the Austin mansion or the Westlake house. I signed the official complaint in my own hand. Steady strokes, each character deliberate. When Ethan left, I walked him to the elevator. "Vivian," he said before the doors closed, "the hardest part isn't the courtroom. It's seeing who has been touching your life all these years without you realizing it." I nodded. "I'm starting to see. And I won't close my eyes again." The apartment fell quiet after he left. I made a simple bowl of soup, turned on a warm lamp in the living room, and sat with the unfinished notebook. I added another line in red ink. 2012 Westlake House. Purchased to keep them from losing it. Never received anything in return but silence. Beneath that, I drew a small square, still unchecked. Ethan said there would be days when I could color those boxes red. Not for triumph, but because the truth would finally have a voice. Late perhaps, but it would be my voice. Just a few days after Ethan and I filed, another storm arrived, not from the courthouse but online. That morning, I was at the office, holding a design plan for a Dallas client, when my phone blew up. Messages came from friends, colleagues, even people I rarely spoke to, all sharing the same link. I opened it. My mother had posted a video on her personal Facebook. The clip showed Gregory's birthday party, myself on stage holding a microphone, the lights harsh on my face. The audio had been spliced and warped. My voice in the video was stitched into fragments. "I don't care about family, the house is mine." Then my mother, standing beside Gregory, spoke with a choked tone. "We raised her with all our love, and yet she values money over blood." Hundreds of comments flooded the post. Greedy. Ungrateful daughter. Any family with a child like that is done. My heart went cold. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. At the office, whispers started. Someone leaned close to another and I overheard. Is that true? She doesn't look greedy. But the video seems clear. I excused myself and locked the empty conference room. My chest tightened like a rope. I opened Facebook again. Gregory had posted a long message with a family photo. My sister has shattered the peace of this family over a house. I never thought blood would turn on itself for money. The post spread like wildfire, shared thousands of times. Strangers who knew me slightly began sending accusatory messages. Vivian, you helped me on a small project. I thought you were decent. I didn't expect this. It felt like the walls around me were collapsing. All my careful silence and evidence gathering suddenly became ammunition they used to attack me. I cried, not from humiliation, but from the realization that I was being isolated, every voice outside lining up against me. That evening I called Ethan, my voice hoarse. If the whole world believes them, does the evidence still matter? He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "It matters more than ever. The more they attack with public opinion, the more we must let the court reveal the truth. Don't let the mob decide who's right." I nodded, though a dark knot grew inside me. The next morning, a message came that began to crack that darkness. It was from Amanda Gregory's ex-wife. We were never close, but I remembered her look at the wedding, the absolute trust she had placed in him. Her marriage ended quickly, and we'd hardly spoken since. Her text was brief. "Vivian, I have what you need. They did this more than once. Meet me soon." I agreed to meet Amanda at a small cafe on the outskirts of Austin. She arrived on time in a gray coat, hair pulled back. She put a thick bundle of files on the table, held together with a rubber band. "I didn't mean to meddle," Amanda said, her voice firm. "But I couldn't stand watching them turn you into a monster in public. I was in that position once, only I didn't have enough proof to fight back." I opened the file. Inside were copies of old contracts, loan documents, and exchanged messages between Gregory and our parents. In those messages, they discussed using my name as guarantor for Gregory's debts. One message even read plainly, "Vivian doesn't need to know, just put her signature on the paperwork. She trusts the family, she'll never check." I read each page with trembling hands. Amanda continued, "When I was his wife, I heard a lot, but I had no power to intervene. They hid things, they lied, and in the end, they dumped the responsibility on you. I kept what I had, in case it mattered later. Now it's time for you to use it." I looked up at her. "Why are you helping me? After everything, they hurt you too." Amanda gave a thin smile. "Because I don't want you to fall the way I did." I stayed silent, and that silence cost me everything. "Don't let it happen to you." I hugged the stack of files to my chest, feeling as if I'd found a key to unlock a door that had been sealed for years. Outside the cafe, sunlight glittered on the sidewalk. Inside me, a small light began to flicker enough to rekindle the belief that the truth would speak up, sooner or later. I went back to my apartment with the files Amanda had given me. It felt like holding a bomb. One pull of the pin and all the fake walls my parents and Gregory had built over the years would explode. I sat at the dining table, turned on a warm lamp, and opened each sheet. The lines of text, the numbers, the printed messages, they all felt like knives cutting into the quiet past I had endured. Ethan came over that evening. He sat opposite me, glasses on, methodically reviewing the documents. He wasn't surprised, but his eyebrows tightened when he reached the 30th page. "Vivian," he said slowly, "this isn't just proof that they abused your identity. It shows you covered at least 3 major debts for them, totaling more than $500,000 over 10 years. If we release everything, public opinion will shift. But you have to be ready. Once this is out, there's no going back." I nodded slightly. "I've already given up silence, Ethan. Only truth remains." Together, we organized the files and scanned everything into digital form. Amanda had also sent a video she recorded years ago, a short clip of a conversation where Gregory and my father discussed shifting financial responsibility onto me. In the recording, Gregory says plainly, "Vivian won't check. She owes the family. Let her be the name on the papers. We'll erase the traces later. We decided to upload everything into an online folder titled The Truth Sullivan. I wrote a brief introduction without accusations. These are original records of what I did and what was concealed. If you're interested in the truth, please read. Ethan hit publish at exactly 8 a.m. on Monday. By noon, my phone nearly exploded. Dozens of messages, hundreds of emails, friends calling, colleagues texting. Some people sent screenshots of online community threads buzzing about the files. The video Amanda provided, together with the documents I made public, spread across Twitter and Facebook at lightning speed. A local paper ran the headline, "Sister slapped publicly at Gregory Sullivan's birthday turns out to be longtime benefactor. Files show she paid debts and saved Gregory's company in crisis. Family purposely removed her name from their success story." The comments began to shift. Many who had criticized me now defended me. An old neighbor wrote, "I remember Vivian driving all night to bring documents for Gregory when his company was nearly bankrupt. She never bragged. It's heartbreaking how they treated her." A college friend added, "Vivian helped me finish a project when I was about to fail. I don't believe what her family is claiming, and now the truth shows it." Even former clients emailed, "I read the records. I want to say you are not only a talented designer, but also a kind person. I will keep working with you, no matter what people say." Meanwhile, Gregory and my parents were oddly quiet. No more posts. No rebuttal videos. Just a long silence, very different from their earlier clamor. But I knew they were scrambling behind closed doors at the Westlake house. 3 days later, another video surfaced, not from me, but from a former employee of Gregory's. He recounted Gregory, bragging, "I have a cash cow named Vivian. She will pay any bill as long as I call her family." Gregory's laughter in the recording was enough to enrage the public. The online community stopped sympathizing with Gregory. They were outraged. Comments flooded in. "He exploited his own sister. That isn't family. That's emotional blackmail." I read those lines with a mix of relief and pain. Relief that the truth was emerging. Pain because I had to hear from strangers what only my family had known. One afternoon, returning to my apartment, an elderly woman from the building stopped me in the hallway. She lived on the 10th floor. We'd only exchanged polite greetings before. She took my hand, her look sincere. "Dear, don't let lies make you fall. We read it all. You lived with kindness, and that will protect you." I was speechless. A stranger had seen me more clearly than my biological parents. That night, I called Amanda. "You gave me a chance to breathe again. I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "Use what you have to stand strong. They won't stop, but this time, you're not alone." I looked at the stack of records on the table, the warm lamplight pooling over the pages like mute witnesses. I could feel the wall they'd built starting to crack, and a wind of truth was blowing stronger each day. On the day of the final hearing, I sat in the plaintiff's row, my hands on the file Ethan had prepared over weeks. Across from me, my parents and Gregory sat in a line, clothes neat but eyes uneasy. They had hired an expensive attorney, but every defense collapsed under the weight of the evidence. The judge, a gray-haired man with a measured voice, read his ruling after nearly 3 hours of argument. He spoke clearly, each word ringing in the courtroom. "Legal ownership of the Austin mansion and the Westlake residence is hereby declared to belong to the plaintiff, Vivian Sullivan. The defendants have no legal basis to claim an interest and have engaged in forgery for profit. This court issues a writ of possession, requiring defendants to vacate the properties within 10 days. I heard each word without jubilation, without a breakdown, only a pervasive quiet washing over me, like a stone sliding off my chest after years of pressure. Gregory lowered his head. My mother whispered to my father, trembling. My father flushed, his angry eyes sweeping to me as if he still believed I was the traitor. But that look no longer made me shake. News of the ruling spread quickly. 2 days later, local outlets ran, "Court confirms Vivian Sullivan as legal owner. Family previously smearing her now faces eviction." Social channels filled with comments. People replayed my mother's doctored video against the evidence I released and concluded. They dug their own grave. On the 10th morning, county officers and court staff arrived at the Westlake property. A large moving truck from a removal company was already parked. ready for relocation. I wasn't there in person, but a neighbor sent me a short clip. The footage opened with a firm knock. My father answered in a rumpled robe, newspaper in hand, and the court officer handed him the writ of possession. My mother stood behind him, hands trembling around a coffee cup, her face frozen. Gregory, unlike the others, chose to livestream the event on Facebook. He held up his phone, filming the officers as he shouted, "Look, my sister is evicting our parents. This is the greatest betrayal in our family, who still believes in justice." What he didn't expect was the reaction. In the comment stream came messages, "Stop the performance. Gregory, the truth is out. You've taken your sister's money for 10 years and now complain? Justice may be late, but it arrived." His live stream quickly became fodder for ridicule. People clipped his rants and juxtaposed them with the loan documents in my name. The online community stopped pitying him and turned on him. As their belongings were piled on the lawn, my parents lost control. My mother screamed hoarsely, "Vivian, you are a traitor. No child would do this to their parents." My father roared back, "We raised her. She turns her back on us." But this time, nobody defended them. Neighbors gathered at the gate. Some crossed their arms, shaking their heads, while others said plainly, "You lived in your daughter's house for years without acknowledging her contributions. And you smeared her in public. Who is to blame now?" Gregory cut his live stream short, his face stunned. I imagined his eyes, then no pride, no swagger, only fear as he realized the world no longer believed the family script he'd written. Ethan sat with me in the office as messages and videos streamed in. He looked at me and said quietly, "Finally, the truth is on your side." I leaned back, took a deep breath. I didn't feel the triumph others expected. Instead, there was a striking clarity. I had escaped the chokehold, no longer forced to carry their lies. The fake walls had collapsed, leaving a void, and in that void I heard my heartbeat steady for the first time, no longer trembling with fear. I waited until the writ was fully executed and the Westlake house fell utterly silent before returning. The iron gate stood open, the driveway bore truck tracks. I stepped inside, moving through a space that should have felt familiar but was empty, where every laugh that once echoed was now the wind whispering through half-closed windows. The great living room had only a few scraps of paper left on the rug. Family photos that once lined the walls were gone, leaving pale rectangles on faded paint. I walked slowly, scanning every corner, every small scratch on the wooden floor that I remembered the cause of. The armchair by the hearth where I used to read during cold days was a bare frame. The cushions had been removed. In the kitchen, the lingering scent of cinnamon had vanished. I pulled open the cabinet under the sink and found, to my surprise, a small dusty box. I took it out and brushed it off. Inside were a few old photographs. I froze. There I was at 8 years old, hair in pigtails, a gap-toothed smile holding a school science trophy. There was also the prom photo in a teal dress, awkward and excited. I sat down on the tile and flipped through them. These pictures had been removed from the family album. They weren't lost, only deliberately excluded and hidden in an anonymous box. My parents had constructed a family history in which I did not exist. I smiled softly, a smile colored by both ache and release. I kept one photo, me holding Baxter in the backyard. A small keepsake, enough to remind me that I had been happy at times, even if fleetingly. I cleared the house not to live in it, but to prepare it for sale. I didn't want it. The walls stored wounds. I contacted a realtor, signed the listing, and when the proceeds hit my account, I donated a large portion to a fund supporting women who suffer domestic abuse and financial exploitation. I wanted other women like me to have a way to stand up when their own kin pressed them down. I used the remainder to renovate the Austin mansion, the house that bore the mark of my own labor. I rehired painters, replaced curtains, swapped the patio tiles, but kept the small backyard where I'd planted rows of lavender. That would be my place to begin again, free from the shadow of my family. When the house was ready, I invited the people who had actually stood by me, not relatives, not those who turned away at Gregory's birthday, but those who had been there. Amanda, the woman courageous enough to hand me the evidence. Ethan, steady and protective. A few college friends who had believed in me even when the world turned its back. The gathering was small, just over a dozen. We sat around a long outdoor table beneath string lights, the warm glow settling on honest faces. I wore a simple white dress and little makeup. I raised a glass of wine and looked around at those familiar, sincere eyes. I spoke slowly and plainly. I used to wait for a seat at my family's table. I thought patience would make them see me. But tonight I realize I don't need to ask for a place at anyone's table. From now on, I'll build my own table with people who truly value me. There was a brief stillness, then the clink of glasses. Amanda smiled, eyes wet. Ethan nodded, as if to mark the start of a new chapter. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone with the lavender scent carried on the breeze and placed the old photo me with Baxter on the living room shelf. Not to dwell on the past, but to remind myself that I had existed, that I had once been erased, and that now no one could do that again. The house was quiet, but the quiet no longer felt like loneliness. It was a safe space where my voice could be heard without being drowned out. In that moment, I understood more clearly than ever. Freedom is not watching others fall, but standing straight, taking a deep breath, and moving forward without looking back. I tell this story not to boast of victory, but to share the long path I traveled from shadow to the light of truth. It took years to learn that family is not just blood, but people who genuinely respect and uplift you. I was silent, I endured, and I believed endurance would win me love. The truth is, only by standing up for myself did I find peace. I want to ask you, if you were in my place exploited and smeared by your own parents and siblings, would you forgive or let go? What do you think is the boundary between family ties and fairness? Share your thoughts because I believe many people out there are wrestling with the same questions. If my story touched you, follow the channel to hear more stories about family and the complicated but instructive relationships of life. I will keep sharing not just to tell tales, but so together we can find strength in truth and in our own voices.